A frantic search for survivors. Southern Gaza is now more densely populated than before, with displaced Palestinians packed into areas where Israel says they will be safe from the airstrikes. A young boy is pulled from the rubble. He's disorientated. "What's your name?" his rescuers ask. "Can you stand up?" they ask. He tells rescuers his family was at home with him. They were sleeping. Their fate is unknown. Others are still trapped under the rubble. Rescuers call out, hoping anyone still alive will hear them and respond. This is the harsh reality for Palestinians, a lack of equipment and digging with their bare hands. In the morning, they assess the damage and are still searching.
This residential house was pounded by Israeli missiles. All inside are innocent civilians. There are no militants here. This residential building was shelled by the Israeli warplanes. It housed about 90 persons. The house holds together with more than 70 Gazans displaced from the north. About 22 were confirmed killed. The rest are still missing.
Forcibly displaced, they're making makeshift shelters on sand. There's a lack of food and water. They make do with what they can.
We evacuated our homes with nothing. The most challenging aspect is the cold. I wear my husband's pants to keep warm, and people gave us blankets. We slept on the sand.
No respite for Palestinians who have already been displaced several times. Israel is targeting the camp with smoke bombs. There's not a single place in Gaza that is safe. There is simply nowhere to go. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera.
Let's go to our correspondent, Hani Mahmoud. He's joining us live from southern Gaza. He's in Rafah for us. Hani, firstly, tell us about these new evacuation orders the Israeli military has issued. Where is it telling people to go to this time?
Yes, well, people have been ordered sharply with a threatening tone in the statement as of early hour this morning. Residents of the northern part of Gaza City are ordered to evacuate their residential homes and the evacuation centers, namely the UNRWA designated shelters for evacuees, to take Salah ad-Din Road and go all the way to the city of Deir al-Balah. Now, Deir al-Balah is a central part of Gaza Strip. Is the middle area that separates the northern part and the southern part. Now, this area have been effectively separated and cut off from the rest of the Gaza Strip with a serious lack of food and water and basic supplies. It's becoming very, very risky for people to stay there as they're running out of every basic. There's actually a starvation going on in that area. But people within the past 2 days were also told to evacuate the eastern neighborhood of Gaza city and the northern part, namely Jabalia refugee camp. We have Shijaya neighborhood, Zaytun neighborhood, and other densely populated neighborhood, all the way directed to the western side of Gaza, of the Gaza Strip. But they found themselves under heavy bombardment and relentless airstrike. People had no other choice but to flee to whatever facilities was still remaining in the area. People in Gaza ran to a Shifa hospital to seeking refuge and shelter in its building. And now what's going on? People are told to go to the central part.
Yeah, it's certainly a very confusing picture, isn't it, Hani? Because for weeks now we've seen the Israeli army telling people to go further and further south. Deir al-Balah is not in the south. And when they do make it to the south, Rafah, where you are, for example, is completely overwhelmed by the number of people who've been displaced many times.
Exactly, and this is confirmed, very consistent what we see on the ground. This war is taking multiple levels now. There is the north and the Gaza destroyed completely, every means of life been destroyed. The central part is destroyed by starvation. People have cut off from the rest of the strip with no access to anything. And now Khan Yunis is under heavy bombardment, but Rafah city, it's double. There is bombardment going on, relentless airstrike. But people keeping keep pushed into Rafah. We talk about a population that went from 260,000 people all the way to 1 million people in Rafah now. It's running out of space, running out of supplies, and it's not safe. That's the problem. People are told it is safe to avoid getting bombed in the north, and Gaza City find themselves under heavy bombardment. There are evidence of this within the past weeks. Mainly displaced and evacuees got killed in the central part in Khan Yunis and city and Rafah city just within hours of their arrival, and that's why there is a huge mistrust and lack of faith in the Israeli narrative, and mainly people describe it as being vague, contradictory, and confusing for the most part. The area they've been told to go to is under heavy bombardment once again. They get killed in those safe areas.
They're being killed if they move, and they're being killed if they stay. That is Hani Mahmoud live for us in Rafah in southern Gaza.
I understand that there are civilian casualties, and I understand that footage and coverage goes towards emotions and to cover those civilian casualties. But what I want to say is that we will get those figures out, and they will be official and on record by the IDF with the name behind it. And then we will be able to say and to back up afterwards with names and numbers that we are indeed targeting the terrorists. We are not after the civilians, and we're going into great efforts in order to keep it that way. And
it is, of course, hard to comprehend 2 for 1. But when you say you're going to great efforts, Colonel, one of those efforts is those IDF directions, which I don't know when you actually plugged in, but I had shared with anyone watching at the top of the show the directions for evacuation that you've put out.
What you spoke about.
All right, so you know there's the QR code, right? And then if you click on it, you can't right now because there's a blackout. But if you were to click on it and you were to see where to go in this urban area, tiny little parcels, block by block, numbers, I suppose. It's hard to even read it. How do you really expect anybody to get that, to click on it, to see it, which they can't do right now, again, because the blackout, and then to follow the directions and to get somewhere safely? I mean, is that reasonable?
I think, Erin, that it may not be perfect, but it is the best thing that we can do. The situation is that for weeks we have designated a humanitarian zone, and we have been asking civilians to go there. Unfortunately, civilians, for various reasons, because they're under the control of Hamas, because international aid organizations have channeled them there, many other reasons, have not yet gone to the humanitarian zone, which I think is very unfortunate. The reason why we made that or designated that humanitarian zone is because it's one of the few areas where Hamas isn't embedded above and below ground, and therefore a relatively safe area, because we would have no interest in fighting there because Hamas isn't there. And that's what we've been asking all along. The attempt, or what you showed on the map, and I can agree that it's not perfect, but by the way, I contest the fact that there's a blackout, because I saw lots of cameras out when our hostages were being returned, and I saw lots of live footage from those occasions as well.
Well,
so
tonight though there is. I was actually going to interview the spokesperson for the Red Cross. We were unable to get communications, Colonel, for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
I mean, there is a widespread blackout tonight.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in March, you condemned Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, for calling for wiping the Palestinian village of Huwara off the map. This week, we've heard the defense minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, declare that he's fighting human animals in Gaza as Israel cuts off the gas, the water, and the electricity. We've heard Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, declare that all hiding places will be turned to rubble in a besieged coastal enclave where there are 1 million children. We've heard Ariel Kalner, who is a member of Knesset from the ruling Likud party, call for a Nakba 2.0, which is essentially a call for genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians as 850 are dead in Gaza. So what do you think of that rhetoric in light of your previous condemnation?
Let me say a few things about that. Number one, we expect, as we said, that Israel will conduct its operations in accordance with international law. Number two, there are going to be a number of statements made over the course of this conflict, and when we have disagreements with them, we will make those known privately. Number three, though, let me just speak to this. Number three, some of the questions I'm getting today do seem to ignore the fact that Israel just had hundreds of its citizens killed, people who were taken hostage, and pretend that Israel shouldn't be able to conduct any kind of. Let me just say,
Palestinian children have been killed? Do you acknowledge that? Will you even acknowledge that?
Let me finish.
80 Palestinian children killed
you know
this
what?
week?
Again,
Babies? Do you acknowledge that?
You asked a question. I will answer the question.
Okay, well, that's my question.
So I'm going to start by answering the previous question that was interrupted. I will say some of the questions seem to pretend that Israel should not be able to conduct operations to defend itself and hold accountable the terrorists who killed civilians. That is not Israel's policy. That is not our policy. It is something that we would vehemently disagree with. Israel has the right to secure its country the way any country does. It has the right to defend itself against terrorism. It has the right to hold terrorists accountable. And I will say, ultimately, the Hamas terrorists who launched these operations, there is no one who has more disregard for Palestinian civilian life than those terrorists. Because those terrorists, let me finish. Those terrorists launched this activity. Those terrorists, again, we seem to have a lot of new people. Those terrorists launched this activity knowing that there would be retaliation, knowing that Israel would have to defend itself as any country did, knowing that it would lead to the unfortunate loss of civilian lives by Palestinians, and they did anyway. Let me go ahead.
That's amazing.
So baby killing is okay here.
Why can't you acknowledge
I'm sure you seen the European debate on assistance to the Palestinian Authority. Initially talking about a freeze in development assistance and then reversing that. Does the United States have any take on that, and how has the U.S.'s own aid posture been affected by events this weekend?
I believe they did reverse that, which is a step that we welcomed. We have made very clear that we do not have any grievance with the Palestinian people. As I have said from this podium a number of times, we support steps that improve the livelihoods, improve the dignity of the Palestinian people. And we supply humanitarian aid that goes directly to the Palestinian people to benefit them. And I think the point that we would make, this is something the Secretary got into over the weekend. There are two paths forward for the region. There is a path of stability and conflict and normalization of relations with Israel. And then there is a path of death and destruction. And it is Hamas that favors that path of death and destruction. We do not have any quarrel with the Palestinian people, which is why we think it's important to continue to provide humanitarian aid that directly benefits them, not the terrorists who are trying